Hi, everybody. Welcome to the McQueen Press Studios. I'm your host, Lee. And then in today's edition of McQueen Press, I'm doing a follow-up video on the anti-war conference that just occurred. Specifically, it was the United National Anti-War Coalition. It was in Richmond, Virginia over the past weekend. And it specifically focused on wars abroad and then wars at home. It was not covered much in mainstream media, which tends to celebrate both wars abroad and then wars at home. And that it's important to note that the same militarization, the same armaments, and the same surveillance and oppressive techniques that are exported abroad are also used domestically against the civilian population. And so we are in a serious place where we have to address these things, because Standing Rock is not an isolated episode. What we saw inflicted upon a civilian population could possibly happen elsewhere in the United States. If you feel that you don't want poison in your drinking water and you say, you know what, I'm going to protest this, and then someone puts a drone over your house and surveils your movements, and then there's militarized police armaments used against you to contain and smother your protest, and then the cameras of the mainstream media turn away, what do you do? And so wars abroad and wars at home. And so I wanted to make sure that it gets out there, and not only me, I'm sure there are other activists. I was not able to attend. I've been looking at live streams, and so I also wanted to make sure that people know that if you missed that conference in Richmond, Virginia this past weekend, that there are live streams available so you can see what the conversation was about. I'll post links to the official live streams put out by the conference itself. And then I'm also going to put out links to the live streams by Debbie Lissignan. She's the channel called Sane Progressive, that she attended the conference, and as a favor and a courtesy, and then also something even more serious, necessity, she live streamed the conference for those who couldn't make it. And so if you want to know what the anti-war conversation was, the peace movement, what it was about, what people discussed, I would suggest that you follow those links in the description and listen to the commentary of the live streams, and then understand what the issues were discussed. And I feel it's important that people do know what took place at the anti-war conference or coalition. Oh, it's a conference. And know that there are others out there who are very much concerned, activists, who are actually doing the work of giving peace a chance. And that Jeremy Corbyn said something very significant that many national leaders have been afraid to say here at home, that there is a direct link between the wars that we export to other nations and then what happens on our very doorsteps to us, as a direct link to those wars that are exported. And that there was an attempt to smear Jeremy Corbyn for saying such things, but apparently people agreed with him. And so there are people who have said that here and found themselves excluded from mainstream conversation as a result. And not just talking about Tulsi Gabbard, not just talking about folks like Cynthia McKinney, not just talking about folks like Jesse Ventura. Many people have spoken out, and from a wide variety of the scale. Even some people considered right wing or right or conservative, such as Rand Paul, spoke very recently very strongly against wars of choice, military interventions, and the need to conquer overseas, putting our nation in harm's way for no good reason, certainly not for self-defense. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and read through the call to action. What they're saying is that there must be an alternative to the neoliberalism of the Democrats and the national populism of Trump. We need an independent movement to address both the economic needs of poor and working people and the escalating attacks on the Black community, immigrants, women, unions, LGBTQ folks, refugees, Muslims, the physically and mentally challenged, youth, students, the elderly, Mother Earth, all of us. And we need to end the wars that are promoted by both major parties, from the ongoing wars in the Middle East and North Africa waged during the Obama years to the threats against Iran and North Korea coming from the new administration. If we can build that united movement, we can unleash the power of the people in ways that will make a real difference. But first, we have to know each other across the lines of race, gender, geography, age, culture, and issues. We have to sensitize ourselves to every form of oppression. We have to understand what the government, under both Democrats and Republicans, is doing in our name to our sisters and brothers in other countries and how that affects us here at home. We need to come together in an action-oriented conference where we can meet each other, learn from each other, support each other, strategize together, and leave with a coherent plan for united, effective action. That's the purpose of the conference. Stop the wars at home and abroad, building a movement against wars, injustice, and repression. And that was in Richmond, Virginia. They say that we can do this. The alternative is to keep protesting while the Democrats, funded by the same big banks and corporations as the Republicans, reposition themselves to co-opt our movement and smother it under another sorry choice between the lesser of two evils. And so this is something that people felt was missing from the People's Summit. A strong voice against military defense spending and the defunding of social welfare programs and education, health, environment, infrastructure, just about everything else. And then also the abuse of our military troops, putting them in harm's way, not for our self-defense, but to create profits for certain members of the Wall Street oligarchy. And so they felt that this had to be addressed and that there wasn't sufficient time devoted to the subject. At the People's Summit, there wasn't a lot of energizing on the concept of being anti-war, pro-peace movements, and into military abuses of our troops, and then of civilians overseas, and then civilians here at home being abused. And so people decided to follow up with this conference scheduled in Richmond, Virginia. And it's very important because, unfortunately, between the People's Summit, which did not fully address anti-war activism, and this conference, there was a vote on a resolution in the Senate. And certain people like Claire McCaskill, Joe Manchin, people that call themselves Democrats, voted to allow the sale of $500 million worth of arms to Saudi Arabia, and that there was no movement or strong voice of opposition against that that might have developed at the People's Summit. It was just a few days following the People's Summit where this sale took place. And so the fact that it wasn't addressed is a concern. It's definitely addressed at the UNAC, the anti-war conference, but the sale had already been approved. it hadn't been stopped. And so we have people as far from diverse sides of the political spectrum as Rand Paul and various other people opposing such a sale, and then people of the Democratic Party, five, sufficient number to actually make the sale go through, voting for arming a nation who has been associated with terrorism in the past. In fact, 11 of the 15 apparent attackers of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon were Saudi nationals, were found to be Saudi nationals. And so now we're arming Saudi Arabia. What are we supposed to think about that? So things like that get discussed, and people try to make sense and try to find solutions, and that's what took place at the Antiwar Coalition Conference. And I'm going to go ahead and leave various links to the conference itself, so you can see what the programming was, and then also the live stream, so you can see what occurred and what the calls for action are. There are additional meetings of left and progressive groups that you might not want to miss out on. If you are able to travel and attend and live stream, that would be terrific, because we cannot count on our mainstream media providing the type of coverage for these events as perhaps for the People's Summit. And so let's see, the next event is the Socialism 2017. It's July 6th through 9th in Chicago. And that's a meeting of various socialist groups. Hopefully we'll see Socialist Alternatives, Socialist Workers, that publication. People, from around the nation that visit and give information. You might see John Cusack. And then other left and progressive groups discussing actions going forward. Again, that's in Chicago, July 6th through 9th. And then the Green Party, the most progressive group with the most amount of ballots. I think at present they are on 22 state ballots for this year, and then hopefully for the midterms they'll be on additional ballots to run down ballot candidates. But they have the most ballots of any progressive group at the moment, 22, almost half the states. And then I think they're working on ballot access in Utah. Maybe they're running for Jason Chavez's seat, the leading candidate. And then also there's probably more ballot access campaigns ongoing even as we speak. They're going to be having their Green Party national meeting in Newark, New Jersey. That's July 13th through 16th. Also, there's going to be a democracy convention, and that's going to be in Minneapolis, August 2nd through 6th. And the democracy convention is covering a lot of ballot, electoral voting, kinds of things, and discussing a lot of issues with our electoral system, probably the Electoral College, our political system, things like this, and how to take action to fix those up. And so again, that's Minneapolis, August 2nd through 6th. And many people have expressed a lot of concerns with our election system. If I could give any advice for those who have found themselves stymied or frustrated, what happened with our 2016 elections and what might still be happening, that this is the democracy convention is the place to be in Minneapolis if you can make it. And if you've got really a lot to say, that perhaps you can actually lead a panel or be on a panel and share your research and information with a larger group to make sure people understand that there are serious issues to discuss. So that's Socialism 2017, July 6th through 9th in Chicago. Green Party National Meeting, July 13th through 16th in Newark. And then Democracy Convention, Minneapolis, August 2nd through 6th. And so there you go. Things to do, places to be, people see. all kinds of things going on, and that there are options, there are alternatives, there are people talking, discussing with each other of what courses to take, and that it seems like the invitations at these meetings are open access, and that there are speakers from all across the political dial. Hopefully, we'll see at these various groups people like Shama Sawant, Jill Stein and Ajamu Baraka, Shri Honkala, Winona LaDuke, Ralph Nader, maybe even Cynthia McKinney. That would be something spectacular. So anyway, make sure to follow up if you have any interest at all in these arenas. That there's activities forthcoming. You can meet like-minded people and find some instructions or directions. And where do we go from here? Good luck.